Number one is using a rod that is too limber. And I should clarify that this is something that often happens when people first enter the sport. They get more of a price point rod, or they don't want to make too big of a financial investment yet. Understandably so, you'll go broke in this sport soon enough. But we'll get a rod that just doesn't have the properties that are needed for many of the bass fishing techniques that we use. I'm thinking Texas rigs, jigs, these types of things, where you need a little bit more backbone. So if you're just getting into the sport and you're going to put one rod, I would get a medium heavy power rating with a moderately fast action, and that's going to cover all kinds of situations for you. Spinning or casting is going to work out great. The number two reason that we as bass anglers fail oftentimes is because we're fishing an in-between speed. I did a video about this a couple summers ago. To really catch bass, we need to be at either end of the spectrum. Super slow, mind-numbingly slow, or absolutely ripping and burning to get those reaction bites. But as bass anglers, we spend most of our time right there in the middle. We get stuck in the middle, and that's the worst place to be. Your most successful anglers out there have really mastered both ends of that spectrum. They know when ripping jerkbaits, burning square bills, when that's an effective technique, and then they know when to really slow down to the point where many anglers just, they can't do it. It drives them crazy. So don't get stuck in the middle. Number three is leaving fish. And when I first started bass angling, looking back at it, this was one of my biggest mistakes or problems. I'd catch a bass and then keep on moving. Bass are in schools or groups so much more often than we give them credit for. So make sure if you find a fish, if you get a bite, if you see a fish, get a follow, work that area over thoroughly, and you might be surprised what you locate. Number four is one that is super tough. I struggle with this all the time, and that is pulling away from visible cover. Now, don't get me wrong, you could spend your entire bass fishing career, your entire lifetime, always fishing visible cover, and you're gonna catch fish. But once you can start to peel your eyes off of that bank and start to find some offshore areas, you're going to be taking that next step, that next leap. And it's hard for us as anglers to visualize what's under the water. You know, you could have something 50, 75 yards offshore, this big rock hump out there, that in the mind of the bass, they aren't offshore. They're sitting on this great big hump out here in the middle of the lake. But to us, it's offshore, and it just takes a lot of mental preparation to get ourselves to that next level. But it's an important step. And number five, the last one, which could account for a lot of times when we don't catch as many as we could, is casting accuracy. Wow, this is such a big one when you're talking about professional anglers and then recreational anglers. This is one of the major differences that separates them. And yes, it's a time on the water thing. Absolutely, the more casts you get in, the more accurate you're going to be. But it's also about technique. So accuracy is extremely important. And if you would like to watch a video about a couple different casting techniques as far as pitching lures or skipping lures, go ahead and check this video out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.